Yes, my name is Bond. James Bond.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
Crush your enemies. See them driven before you.
Whatever course you go on, if you think it's the right one, stay the course.
And Grizzly Adams did have a beard.
And stay the course. That's and be willing to go along and be flexible enough to keep that objective and not be sidetracked by other things that affect our everyday life. That would be my one.
So in other words, stay focused on your goal.
Correct. And Dad was right. My goal for 5 years was sailing people to the Bahamas and the Caribbean, and I'll tell you what, I was good at it. I focused on it, and everybody knew I was good at it. But now I don't do that anymore. I've done a zillion things. But no matter what it is you do, try to stay focused on it.
Surprise,
and go to work
motherfucker.
every day and do what you need to do. And if you do that, everybody will love the crap out of you. Why? Because you're about in a minority of 20% to the 80% to do everything they can to get out of work, even though they're there to work. No, and they're being paid for it.
Right.
No, but they're trying everything they can to get out of work.
No.
No, there you go. You want some advice? That's my advice.
I love you, Dad.
Love you too.
The bottom where it's hollow. My golems wanna follow roads that go below Agartha. They want me to change my sins, but I'm not here to stay with them. Hollow chain, but I don't got a rack to slide. Heard the earth is hollow, grab the rabbit, take a dive. But why? Cause knowledge has a little link to pride. Do you agree? Trapping at the Giza, I'm just trying to hit the tunnel. Them final Mona Lisa, just a frame.
I broke my back. So what we'll be calling on is good old-fashioned blunt force trauma.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
I'm your huckleberry.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm here with the Juan on Juan podcast, one of my favorite researchers to listen to, especially when it comes to alchemy or anything homunculus. Now, let me see if I got this right, Juan. Homuncologist.
You can say homunculologist or homuncologist. It doesn't really matter.
Okay, homunculologist. All right, I was going back and forth with that. And I mean, really, as far as I know, you're the world's leading researcher in the homunculus.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's not my proudest fap, but yeah, for sure.
Well, I would say that that's pretty cool to have found something that the rest of us researchers were just kind of glazing over, and that tying it into pretty much everything. Now, before we get too carried away, please tell everyone where they can find you and all of your, all your good websites where you're at.
I'm pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts at. I'm on my main website is tjojp.com, and you can find me on Apple, Spotify, Google, any major podcast platform. I'm on YouTube as well. everywhere and anywhere really. But yeah, you can find me on there, and I got the Homunculus owner's manual that you can pick up. It'll focus. Let's see here. That you can pick up on my website as well. I have a Ko-Fi store, and this is the entire history of the Homunculus. 33 pages jam-packed of Homunculus information. So
Of course, it had to be 33 pages.
Yeah, it had to be 33 exactly. So
Or it
yeah,
could have been
TJOJP.
Or it could have been 77 if you wanted to go deep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the extended cut. That's the Mind Unveiled 10-hour video that he put out. That's more than I think that script was like almost 300 pages long. So it's a lot of information.
Good shit, Juan. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the way you do your research, especially if you check out Juan's YouTube page. He they pretty much do all the research for you. You know, they're breaking down the books, they're, you know, going into all the occult concepts and trying to get into the perspective of how these alchemists, you know, that operated, you know, back in the day and actually set the foundation for everything that's going on now, you know, where they're coming from. And, you know, obviously tinfoil hat was kind of like my starting point when I got into this. And then every single person that he had on, I branched off and I started looking into their perspective, because I believe that, you know, the way synchronicities come to me is they come to me in information, right? And, you know, you guys have tied in so many connections for me that it's unbelievable. So, you know, I'm really happy that you're giving me a chance to do this podcast with me. And I'll let you know that I got Joel and Sean also scheduled. I've, you know, had Mark Steves on. You know, I've been on the Only Conspiracies with Sam. You know, hopefully he'll have me on the big show eventually. But, you know, more than anything like that, you know, I'm just trying to help people wake up to what reality is, because more than anything, it's not what they think it is, and it's not what the elite trust fund dorks are telling them. You know, what's your take on this whole reality? I know you don't like to really, you're very open minded and you're not married to any ideas, but what in the hell do you think's really going on here?
Oh, that's something. No, you're good. I mute myself over on mine whenever I'm not talking. But that's something that I constantly battle with, because I'm a skeptic, man. That's why I research. I want to see the hard evidence, and it starts off with reality is such a subjective thing, and it's open for interpretation. And I always think about why certain concepts are certain concepts, like why the paranormal is a thing, why alchemy is a thing. Like if you think about alchemy and its influence on, so alchemy, the foundations of alchemy, the operations that the alchemists used to achieve the magnum opus, if that was finding the philosopher's stone or not, that paved the way, and those practices are what is modern day chemistry, right? And we know chemistry is used in a lot of different things in the pharmaceutical industry, which is very corrupt, but right, there's good science. There's not all of it is bad. There's stuff that actually helps people. It's just when you have this corruption that creeps into there, and it right, it makes it bad, right? The greed is what it does. But I think that there's more to it than meets the eye, most definitely. And I think a lot of the more you look into all these concepts, because you're right, I don't marry one concept, and I'm here to present data to people, and they can take it for what they want, right? They can make whatever else. I'm not here to push any agenda. I'm not here to push any ideologies on people. I'm here to, honestly, bro, I'm here to have fun, because you have to have fun and make it a good experience for people to be able to digest it, because we're talking about heavy topics, right? And sometimes people will get on my case like, oh, you had so and so on, and that's this, that, and the third. And I go, listen, I'm not here to debate anybody. I'm here to have interesting conversations and hear people all like you. Like, I want to hear what this dude's about. And you can usually gauge somebody out once you start talking to them from which perspective they're coming from, because I think reality is depending on which perspective you're looking at it from, right? And I mean, a lot of these things that I read about, like, it can get woo-woo like real quick, right? It can go off, and but then I'm reading and I go, is it all right? Is it all mental? Is it all in here? Or is there something to whatever these guys were writing about? And did they really hold secrets that were real, or were they just trolling everybody, right? Because there was that other aspect of it. Like, alchemists were a secret society too, and they believed the idea of withholding knowledge from certain other people because they thought it was too dangerous. They deemed it too well, who are you to deem information too dangerous or not? That's some elitist stuff right there. Like, oh, the peasants can't have this information. It's like, I don't know. Why don't you want us to create gold? Well, because then the queens and kings and all these people, right? This hierarchy, the elitists, they would crumble for them. And that was, you have ruler like Rudolph II who had entire courts of alchemists trying to make gold. I mean, that's what it was all about. But that's why a lot of these alchemists went underground, because that was what was dangerous about the information. Like, if the king or the queen found out that I was making gold and taking essentially power away from them, I'd be in big trouble. So that's why they kind of went underground with it. But even then, I mean, Rudolph II is like the alchemical emperor. So that's really the best example. Even Queen Elizabeth, right? All these elitists always have either an astrologer in their court or something. So that should ring a bell for you right there, that even these elitists, these people high up, they believe in this stuff, right? It's like JP Morgan, millionaires don't have millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do, or something like that. And it's like there's something to this knowledge, whatever it is. If it is BS, if it's not, but there's something to it, and it stemmed from somewhere. And that's what I've always thought about. Like, why is alchemy a concept? Why is Bigfoot a concept? Why are aliens a concept? Like, why are all these things concepts that exist? And even if they're not actual reality, but they exist on some plane of existence. And then you get into the multi-layered realities, if it is a multiverse, or if you can create a reality that gushes forth from your imagination, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, I know it's long-winded, but to answer your question, what is all this? I still don't know, bro. I've read a lot of books, and I still don't even know what it changes. The more I look at it, the more it changes. I think it morphs, right? It keeps eluding me.
Let me ask you this, because I'll just get right to the weirdest fucking thing that I've heard on your show. Do you think Rudolph knew to find the biggest dog dick and beat the cow with it? Like, or, I mean, and if you found, like you said, if you find a bigger one, I mean, how's that change the alchemical spell? Like, I mean, who all knew about stuff like that? Like, did Rudolph know what Falconelli knew, or not Falconelli, but who was the other guy? Paracelsus. Was he after or before?
They were. I want to say they were contemporaries, because it was all during the 16th century. But let me confirm that for you, because I do believe one of the guys. So Paracelsus, I want to say that they were contemporaries. So 1541 Austria, and then we have Rudolph II. So he died. So 1602.
So they might have crossed paths a little bit.
No, so Rudolph was born 1552, but still same century, but no, they wouldn't have crossed paths. Although you had Edward Kelly and John Dee, which definitely did meet Rudolph II, because John Dee, the angels told him to go and tell Rudolph II that he was possessed by demons. That's what the angels told him. So they went ahead and they traveled, and they told one of the most powerful emperors of all time, hey, you're possessed by demonic entities. Like, we need to help you out because the angels told me. Can you imagine, bro? That the drive there of like,
I mean, you had to be pretty nervous at least, like, hey, he could chop our heads off, or he could listen to what we have to say.
Yeah, well, he was more open-minded than most of that time, so he did hear them out, but he ended up kicking them out. He gave them an ultimatum and then ended up kicking them out. But as far as the dog penises go, that John Dee actually had a copy, 2 copies of the Liber Vitae in his library. Actually, there was 2 different copies, but that's just one of the formulas, man, to create a homunculus. There's numerous different formulas that you could follow, and like I said, man, it could have been code, right? It could have been code for something, but what weird, that's why, again, back to this whole idea of what weird imagery to use for occulting something, right? And it gets into this whole realm of like, right, we all come across Crowley at one point in time, and the more you start reading into him, the more you, like, for me, for example, and I get some slack for this from the Crowleyites that like to crawl through the sewers of the internet, and they'll come out and they'll defend Crowley, and they'll be like, oh, he's misunderstood, or you're taking that too literal. And it's like, well, how are you supposed to pick and choose what's literal and what's not? So for the uninitiated reading about the dog dicks and all this stuff, they're going out and trying to find the biggest dog dick. But maybe the initiate knows what that actually means, and he's looking for something completely different, right? And it goes back to that perspective. For the initiate, the perspective is completely different than the uninitiated. So there are 2 parallel realities, if you will, running alongside of this literature, and it can get fuzzy real quick, because when you read Crowley, like for him, I get sick to my stomach listening and reading about Crowley, like some of the stuff that he was writing about, and it's like, but
the
what if that
bestiality and the freaking, the child,
yeah,
shit that he talks about, and people want to defend him, like you said, they're the fucked up ones.
It's symbolic. And then I came across, I'm doing some research right now, and I came across the Liber LXX. I think that's Liber 70, and apparently it's the frog and the cross. And apparently what he did was, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but he took a frog, he worshipped it, he baptized it as Jesus and worshipped it as God incarnated, gave offerings to it, and then he crucified it, tortured it, stabbed it to death, and then ate it, right, as some sort of ritual to initiate himself into the next level. But then you have the people who come out and go, oh, he never did that. He never really, that's all symbolic. And I go, really? Like, but then you got the people who are going to read that, who are adamant followers, who are going to do exactly that is being said.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like
100% they're going to do it, because, nobody's, pretend following occultists. Like if you're in the occultic world, you're really following them. You're not pretending to be an occultist. You're, like you always say, you're a researcher. You're not an occultist. So
I'm an armchair occultist, bro.
Right. Let me ask you this, and a lot of people don't know this, but you were raised Pentecostal Christian, and I was...
Let's keep that on the DL, bro.
Yeah, we want to keep that on the DL, I know. Even though every single episode, he has to make sure he lets everyone know where he's coming from. Now, I'm kind of the opposite. I was kind of agnostic. I had no clue. Like, I've always felt too little to know God, or to know what he would want, or, believe any person that think they know him, right? And I was just kind of agnostic about the whole thing. But after finding out that these elite trust fund dorks really do worship Moloch and Baal and Atat and Saturn and Kronos, and this is all the same person, when you find out that this is all the same child sacrificing, deity that these people worship, it almost, well, then there has to be good. There has to be a God. Like, you know what I mean? So it's almost these evil fucks have finalized my belief in God. So, I would kind of say that I try to live Christ-like. I would never call myself a Christian, number one, because, he never used that word. And whether he's collective conscious or God reincarnated or just an alchemist, like, I'm down with his message, right? And what he tried to do. And I think that it's guys like you and I that need to stand up to this evil, one way, shape, or form, no matter how we can, and try to wake up the world before it's too late. Because I can tell you, with all this, things that they've implemented already, I mean, the people that aren't awake now are there. I'm really scared for them. You know what I mean? Like, if you haven't woken up after 2020 and after everything that's gone down, like, somebody needs to drag you in front of reality, right? And I know that's not our job, but it's like my mom. I almost got in a fist fight with my stepdad the other day because he wanted to try to kind of poke at me about the Indian moon landing. Right? And I'm like, that's such bullshit. Don't believe that. That's such bullshit. It was a fucking cartoon. Like, are you serious? And then he's like, I believe it. He gets right up in my face. He's been drinking, so he's already has the spirits inside of him and the alcohol, and everything that's going on with that. And yeah, and literally with my own family, and I know a bunch of people have, gone through this as well. I mean, it really hit me like a ton of brick when I was running one day and somebody mentioned a Bible passage to me. And it was like Ecclesiastes 1:18. It was like, with more wisdom comes more sorrow, right? And I just started sobbing. Because it hit me like a ton of brick. And I think there's a lot of psyops in the Bible. But in that moment, that hit me like a ton of brick. And I try to tell people, man, just read it. Just read it. Don't be so quick to just say it's this or that. Read them all. Read the Quran. Read the Bible. Read the Book of the Dead. This is all information that you need to get closer to the truth, right? And sorry, I'm not really sure where I wanted to go with how I started with that.
Yeah, and the thing is, bro, like you'll get sick trying to, if you worry about everybody else and where they're at in their journey. And I mean, everyone, right? My family thinks I'm crazy. Shout out to Mark, because that's the whole thing. Like, does your family think you're crazy? Well, my family thinks I'm crazy too. But it's like, it's not. I've learned that, number one, having a podcast is like having kids. You don't tell people how they should raise their kids. You don't tell people how they should do their own podcast, and you should also not tell people how they should live their life, right? I believe, right, you can live as whatever happens between two consenting adults, whatever, it's free game, whatever, right? If you want to dress up as furries and do what furries do, you can do that, right? Leave the kids out of it. But when you start to really peel apart, and some people will only believe what they are presented, the reality, right? It's the whole Truman thing, some people, I forgot the quote, but it's like, which one I'm talking about. It's like some people's reality is only what they're presented, and that's what they'll believe. Like my dad too, especially when that whole thing popped off, right? Code Red in 2020. And some people wanted to take that thing that they wanted to put into us, and some other people didn't. Well, that caused friction even between me and my own family, because my family and I never took it, and they were adamant about taking it, and they called me crazy. There was this whole big fight about it because, right? But it's like now hindsight's 2020. Well, now they regret it, and now they're like, why didn't you stop us? Why didn't you tell us not to do it? I'm like, well, what do you mean? We told you not to do it, and now they regret doing it, and now they're mad at us for not telling them not to do it when we had in the first place, right? We're like, listen, that's poison. Don't do that, right? Like, I've opted out to giving those things to my kids too, right? And I mean, thankfully, we're in a country where we have certain freedoms and things like that, and you can get religious exemptions and all that, those different things. But yeah, I don't worry about certain people because, right, gnosis is whatever is sacred to you. And I agree with that quote. That quote is on point, because that was the whole deal in the Garden of Eden. Don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And when they ate from that tree, well, they then they learned that they were in, again, this is Gnostic cosmology, but they had learned that they were being imprisoned in a false reality. And that's what angered Yahweh or Yaldabaoth or the Emir or whoever it was. That's what angered him. He's like, oh, now now you're going to be casted out of the Garden of Eden, right? That's one of the cosmologies that you can follow. But I think it's the same thing. Once you start to desensitize yourself and get away from the norm and start to look at things again from that different perspective, yeah, it gets sad. It gets sad real quick, and that's why I said at the beginning, you got to have fun while doing it and make as many dick jokes as you can along the way to keep yourself to laugh, to keep from crying, But
Yeah,
I don't take it
100%.
upon myself.
Man, and it's been tough, especially when, like you said, we're getting blamed. Like I fought in Mississippi in a bare knuckle fight, and they said the reason that they got the vaccine was because just in case they had to fly out and I got hurt in a fight and they had to be at the hospital with me. It's like my thumb broke off. I still went to the hospital after the fight and I was there by myself. Like, no, like, who was going to show up? You know what I mean? It was the stupidest thing, but I got blamed, you know what I mean, for doing my thing. And, and I was like, I told you not to take that shit. I told you that it was poison, that it was a depopulation agenda, that it was a million things, that it was heavy metals, that it was all these things that are going to hurt you. And now my stepdad is having all sorts of health problems. And the doctor looked him right in the eye. He's like, you're not going to want to hear this, Jim. But pretty sure this is the vaccine, and I'm scared too because I took it.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's again, I don't
it's fucking insane.
And that just comes to show again that some people are willing to do whatever. I forget what quote it is. It's like the man who gives up freedom for safety or something like that should have neither. I forgot who said that. Something along those lines. I'll look it up, but you get the point. It's like people who are willing to go that far based on whatever's being told to them. Like, right, I'm here. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Those are the most dangerous words
Sounds
ever.
like Thomas Jefferson, actually.
I think it might have been something like that. Some Thomas Jefferson, one of those guys.
It's you're paraphrasing, but it is. I think that is Thomas Jefferson, and you're paraphrasing it. So let's go into Homunculus, man. Like I'm just gonna say.
Ben Franklin, I think, bro.
And you say Homunculus or no Homunculus? Pinocchio.
Homunculus. So let's get this out of the way because there's two different things going on here. There's various things going on. There's let's say that if you want to artificially create an entity, which they quite literally did make that the other day, and I had like 50 people send me that same article like on my website, commenting it on YouTube, sending it on my Telegram, DMing me on Instagram, people
and that
on
video
Twitter.
I sent you that you said you saw, like how old is that video?
The one of the guy creating the stuff?
Yeah, and the egg with the syringe. That blew my wife's fucking mind, Juan.
That's old AF, bro. That's like years old. That's like one of the first homunculus stuff that came out. Supposedly it was debunked. But let's say that homunculus, I would encapsulate it under artificially created man or thing. But a homunculus can be as simple as they aligned your birthday to a certain astrological alignment and they purposely gave birth to you on that. And they did that in order for you to have a favorable outcome in some election right? Let's say you're part of some wealthy family and they all want their kids to be Leo or whatever. That would fall under a sort of homunculus. I mean, Crowley wrote about homunculus as well. And it was mostly based on invoking an entity into a fetus, and then it'll be a regular person, except it'll have like this essence of that entity or that deity or whatever. So it's not so much as like a artificially created man in a lab, which they do that today too. But when you say Pinocchio is a sort of it involves fetishism. So fetishism is right. The word fetish, not in the psychosexual way. A fetish is the dwelling place of a spirit or an entity, right? So Pinocchio, the wooden figure, is the talisman. And then whatever, I forgot how does that story goes. They invoke something into him, or how was it that
he wishes upon a star? He Geppetto, wishes upon a star, and he wanted a real boy into the puppet that he made, and then the puppet came to life after the fairy godmother came down and touched him with the wand.
So that's theurgy. So you're asking for higher astral forces to interfere in your life here on this earth, or whatever you want to call it, right? This plane, realm, whatever. So that would be a sort of a homunculus, right? That's a sort of artificially created being. You have the golem, which is a magical man created through word magic, through spoken language, the tetragrammaton, and the power of the Hebrew language. That was their whole thing. So yeah, Pinocchio, homunculus. We can call it a homunculus. But I just want to get that out of the way so people can distinguish, because there's a lot of things going on, and I like the term homunculus. To me, really takes on an umbrella, right, that encapsulates a lot of different things. So Pinocchio, homunculus, yes.
And in the end, it's all just alchemy at its core.
Yes, I think existence and reality is alchemy, bro. I think that,
and even transforming our bodies, or like learning new skills, is alchemy.
Because any vision is a chemical reaction in your brain, right? Vision, hearing, right? There's a lot of the things that we feel every day are chemical interactions in our body. And I mean, again, mixing, unmixing, projecting, all these different things are part of alchemy. And they say reality itself, right? The watchers, well, they're watching the divine alchemist at work, right? Which is God, the grand architect, or the source, whatever you want to call him. It might be some old guy in the sky. It might not. Who knows? I think it's whatever is, again, back to gnosis. Whatever is sacred to you is, I don't know what your gnosis is, because it's whatever is sacred to you. It's tailored to, to your experience, that's the beautiful thing about it. So everyone's experience and reality is different, because it's all subjective.
Right. Interesting. It's so interesting when you start going down the alchemical rabbit hole. I mean, everything just starts going haywire. And when you say Gollum, that's the thing that the Jewish rabbi made that went crazy in the town and killed several people.
So that actually involves Rudolph II, and supposedly he was against their people, right? And supposedly there was a ghetto, and they were being I always get persecuted, I think, is when they're followed and unalived. And that Judai Rabbi Lowe, which actually interacted with a John Dee and Edward Kelly, he created this artificial man from the ground there. And it's interesting because Prague, the whole idea is that, so in alchemy there's the prima materia, which is like the first matter to ever come, right? So you, and all alchemical reactions, to achieve the magnum opus, you need some of the prima materia, which is like this first element that ever came to be. And in Prague, supposedly there's moldavite in the ground wherever you go there, and moldavite is a sort of, it's supposedly from if you want to believe in space or not, but this meteor that crashed in that area, and that glass, this moldavite, is everywhere in there. So when this rabbi took from the ground and molded this being, it had the prima materia in it, so he was able to animate this being, because the ground there quite literally is magical. So he creates this being to protect the ghetto, right, from the people going in and trying to do things to them. But then it's the typical Frankenstein story, to where your creation goes out of control. One night he forgets to erase the letters on the golem's forehead to put him to sleep, and in some stories he keeps growing and growing bigger and bigger, and starts destroying the entire ghetto. And then when the rabbi finally erases the letters on his forehead, he falls on top of the rabbi and kills him. And then in other stories, he's just able to, right, scratch it off his forehead, and then they take his body and they put it at the top of this, I think it's a cathedral or something there, and supposedly it's still there till this day, but no one's allowed up in the attic of that. I think it's like a church or something like that, a synagogue.
That's like the basement of the Smithsonian. They're never gonna let you down there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's the 16th century Judai Rabbi Lowe, or Love. So I've heard some people say it like that. And
is there many accounts of that story, or is it just like there is?
There's different interpretations of it, of that same story.
But it
So
all has people being unalived by this being.
in Frankenstein fashion, right? When Frankenstein's monster starts to kill his entire family, and he tells them like, "Yo, I'm gonna chase you till the end, and anyone you've ever known and loved, I'm going to kill them." Like, right? And he follows him everywhere he goes. It's like that. That's where that, I think, comes from. This idea of your creation, like the AI, the Terminator. The AI goes out of control, and we've learned from history that doesn't ever end good, right? It never ends good. It's fine at first. It's doing whatever you want it to do, but then somewhere it starts to question its own existence. Like, why am I here? Why was I created? Right? Like, who are you? Why'd you create me? And then it's a can of worms that they open up. But that story comes from that, from your creation going out of control and disobeying you eventually, and just going on some sort of rampage. That's where that comes from. But yeah, there's different interpretations of it.
What about a gremlin?
So a gremlin, like you talking about, like the movie. There's the movie,
Yeah,
right?
like the movie Gremlins, how it kind of just duplicates when it gets hit with water, and it's kind of clones itself. Like, I mean, a clone is a homunculus, correct?
So that's something that I've talked about. That I go, if you're using your seed, I don't know if it would be considered your clone because you're using your own seed. It's part of your offspring. It's part of you because it comes from your seed. But I don't think it would be a clone because you're not creating an identical version of yourself, if you get what I mean. It's more like a kid, right? Like you're taking your seed and you're putting it into an incubator. You incubate it, and it's like, oh, here's little Johnny, right? Like, this is my little homunculus, right? So I think that the gremlin is a sort of like a dwarf, right? So it's like a little element. So Paracelsus, and this is what my next episode is going to be about. It's about elementals, and elementals are, right, the pygmies, the mermaids, like the sylphs, the things in the air. So creatures, dwarfs being one of them, and Paracelsus clumps in giants as well in there, that come from their own domain, from the elements, right? So, but it's funny because he says that if you create a homunculus and you set it free into the wild, it itself becomes a mythological entity or creature. So that homunculus can grow into a giant or dwarf, or, right, if you think about like the whole leprechaun,
Goblin, fairy, like
goblin, yes, yeah. So the gremlin is kind of sort of like that, but it's definitely alchemical. And I haven't watched this movie in years, but yeah, it's like,
it used to give me nightmares. I mean, just thinking that they were in the cupboards, you know, like, I mean, I know it's a cute movie, but when you were a kid, it kind of fucked me up a little bit.
well, if you think about, so a gremlin, according to the Oxford Dictionary here, is an imaginary.
That's what took out the planes in World War II, right? Was the Gremlins.
What?
That's what took out the planes in World War II. Don't you remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon where he's like, the Gremlins always take out the planes. He's like, Gremlins, what are you talking about? Then Bugs Bunny has to fight this little being on the plane. It was called a gremlin.
So gremlins were fictitious devilish spirits which made aircraft break down.
Oh shit.
What?
See, yeah. Hold on. Dang. I love it. I got that one right.
What in the? I never even heard about this. Gremlins, a pilot's worst nightmare. So
it was in Bugs Bunny.
That's crazy. I never heard about this. But the idea of elementals, an elemental. So there's elementals, which are these creatures that are from the elements, right? You have mermaids. You have, like you said, the fae, fairies. They come from the elements. And then you have elementary spirits. So elementary spirits, which are more of like tulpas or thought forms that are creations of man's psyche that are projected and manifested into reality. And the same thing happens, how we were talking about the whole Frankenstein thing and the Gollum. Well, an elementary spirit, once you create it, it can also grow out of your control. So I always heard Manly P. Hall talk about how man can create these elementals and they will suck the life out of him, right? When you're worrying about something, when you have depression, when you have all these different things, well, Paracelsus believed that was caused by the mind, right? When you weren't exerting your creative powers and your creative thought fully, and some of it, like some of it leaked out, whatever, and you weren't using your creativeness constructively, then that would become these entities that would attach themselves to you. And Netflix put out a movie called Homunculus that was made in 2021. It's based off a manga that was made in 2006, I believe. And it's about this guy who drills a hole in his forehead here. And that's actually a procedure that they used to do back, I believe, I don't know which century, but back then they used to relieve inflammation in the brain and all these different things. So it's an actual thing. And in this manga, they drill a hole here, and it's like the third eye. And once they drill the hole there on the guy, he can see people's most inner traumas, right? He covers it. I think he covers his left eye, and he looks and he can see what they call homunculus, which are actually traumas, depressions, different things that are weighing the person down. He can see it on people, right? So they took Paracelsus's elementary spirits, and then they took the homunculus concept and they kind of like intermingled both of them together, because a homunculus is one thing and elementary spirits are another. And they kind of, in this movie, they kind of put it together into one. And I always thought it was like, oh, look, they changed up the homunculus concept. And when I started to do research into this elemental stuff, I was like, oh, no. They took the homunculus concept and the elementary spirit concept, and they just fused it together. Because a lot of these people who are making movies, right, cinema, all these cinemagicians, all these different people, they're taking inspiration from these occult books and this literature that has existed. The same stuff that I'm reading, that I'm learning about, they've been known about that stuff, right? And like, to touch on what you said earlier, and on our money there, there's all these sigils and all these different things, but on it says, "In God we trust," but we always assume that it's the God, right? The Christian God, the good God. We don't know that. It's like, it could be whatever pantheon they want to add on to it, which is fine. You can worship whatever God and deity you want, but we always assume that it's the Christian or Catholic God, whatever, like that God, right? The good one. And we don't take into account, like, wait, it might be some bad juju that they're worshiping. And it's literally, if you ever read Tracy Twyman's, I forgot the article. I'll send it to you after, but it's the creation of money, and she goes hard in the paint because the creation of money is traced back to alchemy, right? And any exchange of energy is alchemy. So when we're exchanging, right now we're doing alchemy. When I buy something at the store, right, that's alchemical. The actual monetary system, if you follow the lore, was, right, given to the Knights Templar, essentially. And if you want to, it's like the whole Faustian pact, this deity, Mahomet or Baphomet or Meat or whatever you want to call it, it was like, yo, I'll show you how to get rich. Just give me your soul, spit on the cross, right? Denounce God, worship me, and I'll reveal all the secrets in the world to you, and I'll reveal to you how to create endless money. And essentially what the Knights Templar created became what is the modern day banking system today. They were the first ones to be like, yo, you deposit your gold here, and we're going to give you a card called a check, and you're going to be able to go over there, and you're going to be able to withdraw it over there, 1,000 miles away. And then they were like, wait a minute, we have everyone's gold. We can start charging people to let people borrow other people's gold, even though we can't cover everyone at the same time if they were to pull out. But who's going to know? So essentially they came up with the modern day banking system, which is what they essentially do today. They let you borrow somebody else's money, and then they charge you interest for it, for money that they it was never theirs to begin with, bro.
Some Babylonian money magic system that
100%.
they've created it just to steal our energy from us, because my opinion, I don't believe they have any creative spark at all. These
No.
people that are leading the way, I think they hijack us in our creativity and use it to further along technology or anything like that. But I really do believe that these elite trust fund dorks can only inherit power. And cannot create anything. And I try to explain this to some people. I explain that they could do 1,000 rituals. They can put out 1,000,000 movies with revelation of method, and they can do all these sacrifices, and then one at a time they'll get in the ring with me, and I would still obliterate them one at a time because in reality their rituals don't work like they think they do. It only works because they have all the resources and all the means and all the ability to present that it is working, right? And that's what I truly believe, and this is where I believe God has our back, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's that's the funny part about it. It's like, does it really work, or are you making yourself believe that it works? Are you tricking yourself and putting yourself in this mindset to believe that it works? Or is there something actually going on?
Like, real quick, we'll come back to Homunculus, but we talked about 77, and the one thing that really got me on board was this book I read by S.K. Bain called 9/11 as a Mass Ritual. And I read the book, and it literally blew my fucking mind. And so I ended up checking all the information that I read in this book. And here's one thing that should put everyone on the side of the Pentagon was at least, and 9/11 was an inside job. Number one, it was started being built on September 11th, 1941. It's built on the 77th longitude. It's built 77 feet high. It's built with 77 5,500 windows in it. So 7,700 windows, 77 feet high. It's built on the 77 longitude. And so, yeah, all those things could be planned for sure. I mean, that's very believable, right? You plan to build it here. You plan to build it this high. You plan to build it with this many windows. I'm in construction, so that all makes sense to me. Sure, you have 77 on your mind while you're building this. Even if you say it's 5 sides, if you count the top and the bottom, it's 7 sides and it's 7 stories high. So you got sevens all over the place. Now they tell you it's hit by flight 77.
Mm-hmm.
And then the doomsday plane overhead is Venus Ishtar 77, right? So, I mean, right there that can't be an accident.
It's a coincidence, right? Bro, I'm sure.
I mean, for real, like, anyone that says that is fucking, I mean, they are so lost to be able to build all those 77s like that on purpose, but then have these two 77s, and then how many victims? 2977. If you take away the hijackers, they try to hide it with the hijacker numbers, 2996. But if you take away the hijackers, who we don't even know if they're real or not, it's 2977. So there's another one. And there's more, right? So, and then you hear this song that I just heard called Super Magic, spelled with a K, by Fitzsimmons or Fitz in the whatever. And he's Super Magic, and he's like, your Corvette 77. You know what I mean? So these people are all in the know, like the people that are, making these songs and at the top of the entertainment. They all know about Crawley and his 77, and there's no way, no fucking way, Juan, that those 77s with those two planes could just be a coincidence after building so many 77s on purpose.
That's one of the things, because you can also drive yourself insane thinking about all the correlations and all the synchronicities or whatever it is you want to refer to them as. But I think that it could have been, I mean, it was 100% an inside job. That's not, I believe that it was done on purpose. But yeah, it's strange. And I think what happens is these numbers and all these things that they use is a sort of talisman, right? And there's a lot of things that could go on there. There's the whole ritual aspect of it, and there's also the aspect of, right, the building being built in a certain way. That's also a whole nother occult thing, because back then, right, architecture as talisman, as magic, like back then they literally referred to buildings as homunculi. Like they
And they'd
were
have
the
it facing a certain way towards the sun, or vice versa, or however they
yeah.
had it set up
Mm-hmm.
for the certain ritual that they were trying to invoke.
Mm-hmm. And these these measurements that they put on these buildings are there for a reason, because what they're trying to do is encapsulate a higher level of consciousness, or essentially a different dimension within this building, right? So, but to the uninitiated, it's just a building. It's nothing. But for
Yeah.
the initiate knows where it's at. Like, they know how to tap into that. And that's the difference. But at the same time, bro, it could all be bullshit. You know what I'm saying? And it could just be a coincidence. Do I think that's the case? No, but I like to think about right, Occam's razor. Sometimes I like to think about, oh, maybe it is, right, and maybe we're looking into it too deeply. Like that's another thing I think about, because again, I'm a skeptic, bro. Right, I'm a skeptic as well, and it's like,
Yeah.
you got people who don't think the planes even hit them. So you got people who think it was actually explosions. You got people who say it's holograms. So you have like all these different realities and things that happen that come out parallel from that one original thing that happened. But yeah, it could have been one. I've never actually read. I know there's a couple authors, one of which I've had on, who's written about 9/11 being some sort of ritual. I've never read any of those books, but I did have
Flight 93, Aleister Crowley's
and it was
Thelema.
American Airlines, so it was AA, which is also Aleister Crowley. And I had what was his name?
93 million miles away on purpose. Thelema.
I had Robert Sullivan on, and he was talking about this what I labeled like numerical parasite, which is like he was breaking down I think it was
Numerical Parasite.
I think it was 77 and some other number. Anyways, a whole bunch of numbers that he was throwing out there. I did a whole episode on it. But yeah, like this idea of wherever these numbers line up, bad stuff happens. Like it's
Right.
a way of signaling that something's going to happen, but it's got to like lead up to it, and everything has to be perfectly aligned to that one number, and then it'll happen. It'll pop off right when that. And he broke it down on my show. I'm not doing it justice, but Robert Sloan, he's written a lot of stuff about.
Well, it's because they're not in a rush, right? They're not in a rush. Sometimes their plan is 100-year plan, and they know that their kid will see it come to fruition, and they won't necessarily, see it, even though they may believe they come back in the same family line in reincarnation.
Yeah, in typical homunculus fashion, which that's another use of a homunculus, to serve as a sort of vessel for the consciousness or soul or spirit or whatever it is of these magicians, in order for them to reincarnate. Now, I believe that's happening. Dude, they came out again, like that report that they created some sort of entity, like without male and female. It's like, if they're showing this stuff now, dude, they've been doing this for years, and the technology that they have behind closed doors is way far. They're just putting the tip in just to see how everyone's going to react, right? They're just like, let's see how, right? We had the foreplay. We're showing them the aliens. We're doing all this stuff. All right, let's put the tip in and see how everyone reacts. Like, listen, we created an entity. Huh?
Yeah. But if we say the word portal, people look at you like you don't know what the fuck's going on. And I'm like, do you know what CERN is? And they're like, no, what's that? And it's just like, at that point, you got to walk away.
What a bizarre thing. How do you explain? And I connected Crowley to CERN too, with the guy that was like top guy at CERN for a while. He was Michael. I always get it mixed up. So Michael Millings Crowley, and then he added another Crowley to his last name. So it was Michael Millings Crowley. He added a second Crowley to his name in 1947, the year that Crowley died. And I was like, what? And then he helped create what we know today as touchscreens. So he helped invent touchscreens, which, if you really think about it, if we're all, let's say that. So Paracelsus talked about the collective consciousness. You have Carl Jung that talked about the collective consciousness. And I've heard about how scrying, right, what Edward Kelly and John Dee were doing, scrying into a black mirror lets you access these other realities. And maybe sometimes these things on the other side can bleed into our reality by you, right, spreading the ass cheeks of reality, sticking your head in, right? The thing sees you and it's going to follow you back over here, right? So it's going to come back, right, back to the cheeks of reality. And through scrying. Scrying is one of the technologies that lets you access this mundus imaginatus. So what if all of us, right, collectively scrying together every single day with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, every single day, scrying, right? Projecting our thoughts into reality, right? We have Crowley, who maybe he was reincarnated as that one guy and helped invent the modern day scrying mirror, essentially is what this is, right? And then what if we're bringing all these things into our reality because of this, right? In some weird, because I believe that Enochian, right? Enochian is a sort of magical system that is, and if you trace back the origins of technology, it always goes back to the occult, bro. Like always goes back to the occult. Like these.
I was just gonna say, I was gonna put a shout out to. I want everyone that's listening to this episode right now to go to your episode. I think it's with Thomas, where you guys break down paranoid. Shout out to Paranoid American, where you guys break down the occult history. It was either To Kill Mockingbirds or maybe
Shadow Band Syndicate.
Shadow Band Syndicate, yeah. Okay, yep.
Number
you
5.
guys broke down the history of technology and all of its occult origins, and pretty
only
much
some of it, bro. Only some of the history, because that's the thing. This rabbit hole goes so deep that you can get lost in the sauce because
obviously you didn't do everything. I mean, that would take fucking a million-hour episode. But as much as for so much stuff that I had no clue that the people who invented it are trying to invoke demons.
100%, yeah. So these dudes at CERN that are, because it's funny because CERN has a like this huge array of magnets, and magnets is the stone of choice for magicians, right? So like, these guys at CERN are dealing with forces they have no idea what it is. It's essentially magic, right? It's all these quantum physics, right? This big word that they put in front of all this stuff is essentially magic, some sort of unintelligible forces that they're messing around with. They're clashing atoms together. It's like, what? Like, how do you? And then atoms are conscious. Like atoms themselves, they're conscious because they react differently when they're being observed versus when they're not being observed, right? I mean, that's been proven, the double slit experiment. So the idea that this inanimate object has some sort of consciousness to it, but is it that item has consciousness, right? The atom, or is it that our observation as humans, right, has that effect? Are we more powerful than what we've been led to believe because us observing atoms makes them react in a whole different way, right? Is it us causing that change, or is it the atom knowing that we're observing it, right? It's like, is the Schrodinger's cat, is it dead or alive? It's like, well, you don't know until you open the box.
I definitely think we're a lot more powerful than we're led to believe. I did a lot of research into superhumans, and I studied the monks of, the Shaolin monks, and the one guy's just sitting in boiling oil, and he's meditating, and the lady sticks her finger in the oil, it burns the fucking skin right off her finger, right? He gets out of the oil that's been boiling, he just like hits his leg like this. Nothing, Juan. Nothing. He gets out
Whoa.
of the boiling oil and it's nothing. It's not even burning him. You got this guy that climbs walls like Spider-Man in Africa. You've got the Iceman Wim Hof that has 22
Mm-hmm.
world records for climbing Mount Everest with nothing but shorts. And
Bro, that's wild.
he has a whole cult of people who now climb mountains with him in just their shorts because he's taught them the breathing techniques and the ability, right? He's got a whole following of people that follow him on these retreats, and they climb mountains just like him now. You had this one kid, he died now, but he had cancer and it affected his brain in a certain way where he's kind of like Daredevil. He would make these like sounds with his tongue, and he would be able to have echolocation so good that he could play basketball better than regular kids, and he was fucking blind, right? And so I really do think that, yeah, we are, this one guy ate a fucking whole airplane. You know what I mean? Another guy could drop boulders on his head. His head was so hard, he dropped
He ate
boulders
an
on his head in
airplane,
the dirt.
bro?
Huh?
He ate an airplane, you said?
Yeah, a whole Cessna.
He ate it?
Ate it. Guinness Book of World Records.
Hold on, dude. What? Guy eats Cessna plane. Bro, what? Famous for deliberate consumption of indigestible objects, he came to be known as Monsieur Mouth. He started eating this unusual diet at age 9. What in the world, bro?
I'm telling you, man. And so I studied about 50 of these type of cases where the people had real life superpowers. So when you talk about these movies where I absolutely believe they're telling you the truth, they have to. They have to tell you the truth. It's the number one requirement in their stupid elite trust fund dork religion. They have to tell you. And I think they use movies and books more than anything to tell you, right? And you study these superhumans. I mean, one guy cut a bullet in half. He's a samurai. Now, granted, I think you could get lucky cutting a bullet in half. Maybe he had many tries. And you shoot the gun at the sword, and it could happen, right? So, I mean, that's one that I can kind of, be skeptical about. But there's a bunch of them, Juan, that like that Cessna, you'd be like, what the fuck? If you saw this video of these guys sitting in this boiling oil, it's the same thing. You're like, all right, this is superhuman. The guy hooks a light bulb up to him, it lights up. A guy sticks a frying pan to him, it sticks to him. It's like he's Magneto, so these are rare cases, but I believe that we're all capable of some sort of distinctly superhuman power. That's why I really tried to work on things I wouldn't usually work on, like jumping rope on the balance board, for example. Like, I get entire crowds at the gym watching me thinking I should be in the circus or something because I'm really working on trying to do things that I've never done before. And I'm 41, right? So I'm not, I try to keep myself, as much martial artist, ninja shape as possible, and this is one of the things I've added to my regiment. And I think about alchemy and that this balance board and me jumping rope on it as I keep getting better and doing more tricks. This is alchemy. It just hit me one day. Like you were talking about it, I was on the balance board and it hit me like a ton of brick that me standing on this board and jumping rope is alchemy. It is transforming reality.
So what is it you do? So you have the thing that has the like, it looks like the exercise ball at the bottom of it, and you have to balance on it. So you're jumping rope.
And then I jump rope on that. I'll send you a video after. I think I already sent you, and I can do crisscross, I can do spins, I can do double jumps. And I've always been pretty decent at jumping rope, but I put the balance board and the jump rope together, and now I've created this like new niche that I don't really ever see anyone doing, and I'm trying to really elevate it. But I do that with
dangerous,
everything.
bro.
Yeah, it is pretty dangerous. I'll send you a crazy video that I did in the mountains on a picnic table on my way down. Because I'm down here taking care of my uncle, and making sure his will and testament is all good to go. So I'm in Lake City, Florida right now, which I know you're in Orlando. I'm actually closer to you than I usually would be, which I live in Michigan.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're up north. Oh,
But I was
cool.
born in Key West, right? Key West,
Okay.
Florida. So kind of close to Puerto Rico and where you are now,
Do you feel that that's helped you though, the whole on the balance board and jump rope? Do you feel like it's made a difference? Like your core strength and all that?
I feel like it's made a big difference in my balance and in my confidence to be able to stand on things without falling. Yeah. But as far as like fighting goes, not really, your big three is always going to be regular jump rope, running, and hitting the heavy bag, and then spar once a week. These guys that try to spar every day are going to get a lot of brain damage by the time they're your age, like 30. You know what I mean? They'll be done, if they spar every day, so I try to keep it at once a week, and I'm still, have all my faculties. I'm 15-1 as a pro. And a lot of guys that are younger than me, I notice that their speech is really bad already.
Really? I mean,
Yeah,
because when you guys spar, do you guys have that thing on or no? Not for MMA, right?
well, I do boxing, MMA, and bare knuckle boxing, so I kind of do it all. I started out regular boxing, and then I coached all these MMA guys in boxing, and then they told me I got to do MMA, and so I tried it, and I did my first MMA fight the day after my dad died, which was the day after his mom died. So my grandma died, my dad died. My last conversation with him was, Dad, Grandma just died. I love you. He's like, fight smart, fight relax. And then he died right after I got off the phone with him. And then I fought the next night and I got a spinning back kick knockout. And it was my first try at MMA. And that fight literally changed my life in the sense that that's the reason I run the casino in Detroit now, was because I took that chance. I didn't back out and I followed through with that. And it changed my reality forever. So now I own my own gym. I have a few different companies. I'm starting to get into the podcasting, and I run the Detroit Motor City Casino, the fights there, because I followed through with what I was supposed to do, right? And I try to always communicate that to people. Man, no matter what's going on in your life, try to find a solution and do what you know you're supposed to do. My dad would have never wanted me to use his death or my grandma's death as a reason to back out of the first fight that I ever backed out of.
Because if you would have never gone through with it, then you wouldn't have had.
I wouldn't have everything that I have right now, which I'm so blessed, and people look up to me so much, and in this area. Now, granted, I'm not world famous, but I have fought in front of a few million people on the BKFC app. But I broke my thumb off. They kind of treated me like shit. I had to put my surgery on my own insurance. And now I kind of have like certain demands that if they want me to fight for them, they have to scratch my back and stop treating me like I'm a piece of shit. So if they're supposed to be this big, world company, I should not have had to put my thumb reattached on my own insurance.
You like blew your thumb off, bro?
Yeah, it broke off in the fight in the first round, and I still fought the whole fight with it broken off, and I beat the guy's ass. And it went all the way. It went to a decision.
Bro, you're
I'll show you some of the highlights. You'll be like, that's nuts. But
you're one bad motherfucker, bro, because that's
so
crazy,
many people,
dude.
literally so many people in bare knuckle, they barely like hit their knuckle the wrong way and they like quit. And then it's like find out that the guy didn't even break his hand. He just acted like he did. I'm like, what a bitch.
It just hurt him. It just hurt him.
Yeah, it just hurt him. So there's a lot of guys like that, and I feel like I should be treated with more respect. So if they want me to come back, I gotta like all of it, not just some of it. I told him I gotta like all of it, and Dave said he's gonna have me back. Dave Feldman, the president. So we'll see. Things are legal in Florida, as you know. Everything's been busy down here, but in Michigan things aren't legal. So that's kind of the reason why I've kind of been mistreated, I think, because I don't have that ticket selling base for the local shows, right?
Yeah. And you never done UFC?
No, I never got into the UFC. Just everything was local. I had 5 amateur MMA fights, and then I'm 4-0 in a pro. So I'm 9-0 in pro boxing, 4-0 in pro MMA and 1-1 in bare knuckle, and I lost that last fight by decision. But if you watch the fight, you'll see that I beat the guy's ass in his hometown, and they gave him a split decision. His face was swelled out to here. He had 45 stitches. I only had 5 stitches, so like whoever went to school the next day and said they won, that was definitely me. You know what I
It's
mean?
like, if
So,
you look like that, I want to see the other guy then.
yeah, I'll show you a picture and then you could decide who won or not. But yeah, man. So yeah, that's kind of like, my story of how I've got to been here. And right now I'm just trying to fight the good fight, which is the spiritual war. That I have 4 kids. I know you have children, and we don't want to leave our children to a world where they own nothing and supposedly are happy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the scary part about I have 2 kids, and that's the scary part about having kids, right? But if I've learned anything, bro, and this is another thing that really kind of it's annoying sometimes, because it seems like every generation, right, with 9/11, some people thought that was the end of the world, right? Some people thought it could not get any worse than that day, that it was all downhill from there. But it didn't end, did it? Right? And then you have people in 2020. Some people thought that was the end of the world, right? Like that, it couldn't get any worse than that. The peak of it, April, right? 2020, 420. It couldn't get any worse than this. And it's like, it didn't end. So it's like, am I afraid for the future for my kids? Absolutely. Yeah, I am afraid, right? Because I think living is scary, bro. I mean, living can change, your life can change in 1 second. But it's like, you can't constantly live in that fear of that, because you're going to, back again to the beginning, you're going to make yourself sick worrying about everybody else that, right? Not only your family, you're worrying about your family is one thing, but then worrying about that YouTube subscriber who commented something bad or whatever it was, like,
Definitely don't read the comments.
You know what I mean, though, dude? It's like I am afraid for my kids, but it's like, this is life, man. I mean, and I'm 29, and I think I turned out pretty decent for as much as I've lived my life. For as long as I've been alive, my 29 years of life, I think I've done pretty well, and I'm a decent human being, I would consider myself, right? And but yeah, absolutely, I think it is scary, and I do worry about my kids. But I don't know, man. I think that more and more people are waking up, and I think that they're starting to realize what's going on around them. But there's still a lot of people who don't have a damn clue of what's happening around them. Like, there's still a lot of people.
They're literally like lemmings, just following the guy in front of them right over the side.
And that's the scary part, bro. That's the scary part. Because like me, I can't have regular conversations with people anymore, because I forget that not everyone's interested in this sort of stuff. Not everyone cares about Homunculus, right? Some people might think you're a freaking weirdo if you start to talk to them about that, right? So it's like, I gotta constantly remind myself that. And my wife makes fun of me all the time about it, but all my friends are in the computer, right? Like, she's always talking like, I don't really have a lot of people, right? Local. I have my neighbors and stuff like that I'm friends with, but I don't really hang out with a lot of people. And I hated everyone in high school. Like, I absolutely hated everyone in my high school. So it's like, I don't talk to anybody from that. But yeah, man, I think I don't think we're living end times. That's something I think about. And the first book I ever read growing up, when I got my first Bible from my grandma, who was super religious, the first book I ever read, because I've always been intrigued by the strange, weird, and Apocrypha has always been interesting to me.
Yes.
Right? Like, the supernatural has always been, like, dragons and all these different, like, has always been interesting. And the first book I ever read was the book Revelation. Mind you, I was like freaking 12 years old, 11 years old, reading the book Revelation. That's kind of traumatizing, right? For a freaking 11, 12-year-old kid to be reading about the end times, right? And this vision that this guy's having, and the dragon and the harlot and all these different things. And I'm trying to figure out what it all means. But dude, if there's a more alchemical book, it's the Bible. The Bible's alchemical, bro. The Bible's alchemical as it gets, and it's interesting because the alchemists, they would write commentaries on the book of Genesis because they believe that in the book of Genesis it holds secrets on how to create the Philosopher's Stone. The artificial creation of life is revealed in the book of Genesis. Now, I believe that there are codes hidden within the actual text. So maybe the first editions, if you want to follow the conspiracy, you know, Francis Bacon and all his little pals were responsible for the first 1611 King James version of the Bible. The actual text itself, like the actual text, holds keys. But then the actual story within the Bible holds keys as well. So it's like you have these two realities interlaced with one another, where it's like the text holds keys, maybe the first versions, and they took it out. Because they're like, only a certain people are going to have this access to this information. So the first editions had this crazy secret cipher within the text. And then the story itself also has some secrets to it. So it's like, I think the Bible holds so many secrets that
it's
have
layers
been occulted.
upon layers of secrets.
100%, bro. It's exhausting. So it's like, I recently did a translation of, the guy's name was, the alchemist was Gerard Dorn, and I did a translation from this commentary that he wrote in 1568, and it's a commentary on the first chapters of Genesis. And it turns out, so I was diving into the alchemical biblical aspect of it all, and then I came across this commentary, and it turns out that Gerard Dorn was the alchemist that inspired Carl Jung and his active imagination concept. So the way that Carl Jung was able to access, you know, you have outer space. Well, he was able to access inner space through active imagination, this sort of trance-like state that he would put himself in to interact with like the shadow self. And he was like seeing the devil and all this crazy stuff. Like, Carl Jung is a deep rabbit hole. And as I'm translating this work of this guy and I'm like looking through it and learning about this dude's history, I'm like, wait a minute. It's like Carl Jung was studying this dude's work like deeply. And it's like some obscure alchemist, but it comes to show that, right, some of the greatest minds have an attraction to the same stuff that we would consider obscure and like woo-woo. But yet Carl Jung was like studying this dude's work, and he like carried his books around with him. It's like, this dude, and like, how many people know that? It's like this Gerard Dorn guy. If I wouldn't have ever looked into him, I wouldn't have known that he's the most cited alchemist that Carl Jung, you know, took quotes from. Like, a lot of Carl Jung's work is this Dorn guy, and it's wild to me. And then from this Dorn guy, I found this other commentary, and this dude wrote 1,200 pages on the first chapters of Genesis, and I'm currently in the works to translate that, because it's like, these are books, bro, that exist in like these obscure, right? So it's like old low script German or like Latin, and that haven't been read in hundreds of years probably, because nobody really cares about it. But I want to know what they say, bro. Like, I want to see what it's all about. Like,
that's the good shit.
Bro,
that's
exactly
the good shit.
Because I've gotten to the point in my research where it's like, you can only take so many secondhand accounts, right? Of other great researchers too, and people and PhDs and all this stuff in this realm. But sometimes you want to take the information directly from the source, right? Directly from that one guy. Like, I don't want to take excerpts anymore. Nah, forget that. I want the original source. I don't want no like, I'll translate it myself and you know, pull whatever I deem necessary, because bro, I've seen it time and time again where certain scholars will omit details because it doesn't align with their personal beliefs. Right. It's like, who are you to omit that, right? I mean, you're doing a disservice. And imagine that's just like from a scholarly occultic point of view. Take it, you know, extrapolate it out. It's like things that have actual power over people. The Bible has power over people, bro. It's an interdimensional book that changes people's lives, right? It has real power. There's establishments, and there's a lot of money that revolves around the Bible. So imagine how that's been manipulated from the original source. Oof. Right? You got to think about all those things and take it into consideration. I'm not trying to, again, I consider myself a Christian, and I'm not trying to bash anyone's religion, but just take that into consideration when you're reading these sort of things, that man has translated it, and, you know, man is behind it, and man's not perfect, bro. Man's not God. So it's like, how has this been manipulated since the very beginning, and what intentions are you carrying? Right? If there were this secret society that edited the first versions, what did they put in there? And why the Bible out of all the books, right? Why even do that? And what were you hiding to begin with? So it's like, it's this whole thing, bro. But I think about that all the time, and people need to take that into consideration when they're, you know, diving into whatever they're diving into. Like this I call it the occulted scaffolding, which is a real concept.
Yeah, man, it's freaky. Well, I mean, one thing I love about information and is you'll never run out of it to find, right? You're never going to run out of information to look at. And at this point in my life, for probably the last 5 years, I can pretty much only listen to music when I'm actually working out, running, hitting the bag. But whenever I'm working, whenever I'm traveling, I'm always trying to take in new information, you know, and it's usually the researchers that I, love to listen to. And I have to admit something before you go, Juan, but when I first started listening to you, I was telling everyone, I was like, man, I found this new researcher, this Mexican guy. I really like him, man. I really like listening to intelligent Mexicans talk, I realized. And I'm telling all my friends this, and then I'm listening to and you're like, yeah, back in Puerto Rico. And I'm like, fuck. I'm like, so I just had to get that out there, that I was telling people at first that you were a really intelligent Mexican, but in reality, you're a very intelligent and well-researched Puerto Rican, Pentecostal Puerto Rican.
Pentecostal Puerto Rican, bro. I mean, there's nothing. I love Mexicans, bro. I think Mexicans are awesome. Shout out to the Mexicans. But yeah, I'm not Mexican. I think Tripoli's probably to blame for that one, because he's called me Mexican a few times, but no hard feelings, because again, I love Mexicans. But yeah, I am Puerto Rican. And yeah, dude, I mean, like I said, I'm just a regular guy that likes to research interesting things, and I like to have fun while doing it. And I mean, that's the secret, really. If you want to be successful, have fun, make it fun for people to listen to, and just, if you research things that you find interesting and that you're passionate about, it's going to bleed through into your work, and people are going to notice that, and they're going to be, right, that authenticity. They're going to be attracted to that. So, you know, people always ask me like, oh, you know, how do you do? I was like, I talk about whatever I want to talk about, like whatever I'm feeling, that, you know, I let my intuition take over sometimes. Like I'll feel different subjects and, you know, for my next thing, but it's like 95% of my episodes are free form conversation, and they're like think tanks for whatever research I've done prior to that. And then it's alchemy, bro. It comes together sometimes it doesn't, right? And the ones that you don't think are going to be bangers end up being bangers. I mean, that's just the way it works, because, you know, I'm here for the long run. But yeah, I'm just a regular dude trying to decipher the secrets of the universe, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. That's what we're all just trying to do, is figure out what this reality is, this realm, you know, whatever you want to call it, a ball, a flat earth, a realm. I choose realm because in the end, we all really don't know what the fuck it is. But I know NASA's fucking lying. That's all I know. And the people can find you at tjojp.com, the One on One podcast. You know, I'd really like to do this again with you, Juan. I love your research. I love your methods, and I've learned so much from you and all the guys. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll be making sure that as many people who can find you from me will, man. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, dude, thank you for the invite. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And yeah, we'll stay in touch, man. We'll definitely do this again.
Make sure you go and buy Juan's the Homunculus Owner's Manual, and check him out on the One-on-One podcast and everywhere that you can listen to podcasts. But I truly recommend going to YouTube and or his Patreon, and getting on there so that you can see the research and the slides and the presentation, everyone, because that's really that's really what it really helps to understand a lot of these deep, complicated, complex concepts that Juan is talking about every episode. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to Juan. God bless, man. Stay the course. Stay the course, man.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.